the Cinch World's Toughest Rodeo, January 10th and 11th at Wells Fargo Arena. It's rodeo and a whole lot more. Come early for autographs, pony rides, and more. See more action, the best entertainment, and be part of the fun. It's too great to wait. Get tickets now at HiVTix.com. It's wild, it's western, it's pro rodeo at the Cinch World's Toughest Rodeo, January 10th and 11th.
Scott Dochterman, Chad Leistikow, together on one pod, talking odds and all things Big Ten. Powered by GameDay Men's Health, with locations in Ankeny, West Des Moines, and North Liberty. From the Channel Seed Studios, this is Legends and Listeners. Exclusively on Iowa Everywhere.
Hey, Hawkeye fans, Big Ten fans, and Iowans everywhere. Happy Friday morning to you all, and welcome to a rare live editions of Legends and Listeners here from the Channel Seed Studios. Maybe you're here for the very first time because we record on Wednesday nights. It goes out Thursday mornings. Now we're on a Friday morning. Obviously, the holiday schedule, Iowa's Music City Bowl, all that stuff kind of affected this. My name is Chad Leistikow. I work for the Des Moines Register. I cover the Iowa Hawkeyes. My co-host's name is Scott Dochterman. He works for The Athletic. He's kind of a big shot over there. We're thankful for Chris Williams and his team at Iowa Everywhere, Aiden Wyatt, the amazing producer we have, for bringing us together on this show that now reaches episode 73, Scott, getting close to 18 months with one another. And we usually roll for about an hour if you're here for the first time. I'm here in Nashville ahead of Iowa's Monday appearance in the Music City Bowl versus Missouri. Scott covers the Hawkeyes, of course, but he's knee-deep in the college football playoff. And I believe, Scott, you are heading to Pasadena soon for Ohio State, Oregon. So we're in different places today, but when do you leave? You're pretty excited for that trip?
Yeah, I am. I mean, it's been a kind of a whirlwind the last few weeks. Last week I was in South Bend and then at Columbus back to back in consecutive days. And now I'm heading out to Pasadena, I think the 31st. So that should be a pretty decent game, I would say. Oregon and Ohio State, which I think many people would consider the de facto national title, at least at this stage. So, yeah, I'm heading out for the Rose Bowl, and it's a traditional Rose Bowl. But I'm anxious to hear what you've learned and acquired in the Music City Bowl area in Nashville with the Hawkeyes. I know you got some good quality time on the side and made me a little bit jealous yesterday, and so I'm hopeful.
That's what I'm here for. I just want to be jealous. It's the only reason
exactly.
I came.
I hear you.
I'm gonna have to manufacture some energy today because I went down, so I didn't have a lot of time between my shower. We got practice right after this and the show, so I ran downstairs here at the hotel I'm at to get coffee. I even got my big cup from Zaxby's yesterday. Zaxby's is not as good as Cane's. Mm-hmm. And all they had was decaf. So I got to manufacture that. So I didn't have another choice. I could make something in the room here, but that's not, I don't know. I don't really ever do that. So anyway, let's get rolling today. Scott, you know me. I like to have everything sort of pre-planned. And so I kind of landed on this question as an entry point to our conversation today because there's so much we got to hit or should hit. But I'm confident that this question will kind of lead us to everything that's in my mind to discuss. So here it is. What will it take for Tim Lester to be able to attract the quarterback Iowa needs to once and for all elevate this passing offense? And we know after Bo Pribula chose Missouri over Iowa that it wasn't about the money. So what will it take, Scott, and when will it happen?
I think it's going to have to take another year's worth of I would say growth. I wouldn't call this year a success in the passing game at all. I mean, it's 131st in the country. That's not good. I mean, second straight year that only the service academies had worse passing attacks than Iowa's, and Iowa actually doesn't employ any kind of option offense. So that's dangerous territory if you're a quarterback. If you're a good quarterback and you're looking for the opportunity, because let's face it, all of them are looking for a payday now, but they're also looking for an opportunity to go to the next level. And if you're that kind of a quarterback or an opportunity just to play, Iowa's not going to be your first choice. And if you're Bo Pribula, Mizzou offered a better, even though Missouri was not great this year through the air, statistically at the quarterback position, and they're really, there's a lot of issues there now, but I think they offer a blueprint to more success than what Iowa does. So what I think in the future he's going to have to do is they're going to have to need a healthy quarterback. They're going to have some success. They're going to have to post numbers, minus the touchdown passes, but similar to what we saw with Nate Stanley. I think you're going to have to get 2,500 passing yards. You're going to have to get a minimum 2-to-1 ratio touchdowns, interceptions. You're going to have to get, which they did hit this year, plus 60%, probably more in the 63% range for completion percentage. If he can manufacture that out of whoever is the quarterback this year, I think then Iowa becomes a more enticing team, because statistically in the other areas, 28 points a game, second in the Big Ten in rushing this year. I think that overall that this team's got a chance to really take that step forward.
Well, yeah, and Tim Lester delivered on a lot of the stuff he said he would. He said, number one, he was going to try to cut some national rankings in half. They've been pretty close to that in terms of scoring offense, total offense, third downs for sure. It's been obviously rushing offense to lead the Big Ten. Iowa led the Big Ten in rushing offense. Now, I know the season's not over yet, but for the first time since 1960, Scott. First time since 1960, just under 200 yards per game. So,
well, Penn State's number one.
Okay. Well, it's in the Iowa notes as
okay.
As maybe that was. Hang on, let me look.
Yeah, Penn State's at about 202.
Okay, yeah, they're 2 yards ahead. 2 yards ahead. But that was, I guess, after a playoff game. So, yeah,
they messed up the notes, but it was before that. It was
maybe they sent the notes before. They did send the notes actually before Penn State played. But anyway, so regardless, the rushing offense was there, and then if you look at the pass attempts, they actually were fourth lowest in the country in pass attempts. So, and that's not what Tim Lester wants to do. It's just that he didn't have, Cade McNamara wasn't the quarterback that probably he needs for this offense. And obviously, the point I wanted to make here was, the Tim Lester offense, it was a bold undertaking to install the Shanahan style at the college level, because it's very complex and it relies on really good timing, which requires a lot of practice between quarterback and receivers. And last spring, Tim Lester's first spring with the Hawkeyes, his quarterbacks were Deacon Hill and Marco Lainez when they were available. Brendan Sullivan hadn't even joined the team yet. So you understand that. You understand that he leaned into what worked, and they kind of found a way to win 8 games. Not making excuses necessarily, but I think he's earned some latitude on this one. And I'm in agreement that, I just think that everyone said, well, it's all going to be about the money. And I think the Pribula thing showed it. Brad Heinrich said, he liked Missouri's offense better than ours. It wasn't about the money. So that's pretty telling, right? I mean, that's it's going to take more than an NIL to bring a good quarterback in here. And so here we are.
Right. Because good quarterbacks want to thrive. They want to succeed. They want to have an opportunity for success, and they want an opportunity to go to the next level. And if you're looking at Iowa's passing game as a quarterback, you're going, there's nothing here that says that I can do that. Now, what Tim Lester can do is show improvement, growth potential, opportunity, and also that there is the potential to take this to a level that it hasn't been in several years. And that's all true. And I agree with the offense. It looked light years better in so many different ways. I mean, this is a team that scored 40 plus points in 4 out of the 7 home games, 38 plus in 5 of them. That's really, that shows a lot of growth potential. I think overall, though, that, you've got to take that next step. And now in Iowa's case, and this is not Tim Lester's problem, this is just part of the whole mosaic that is Iowa quarterbacking, that you've got you mentioned in the spring, you had Deacon Hill, who you knew was going to hit the portal anyway, but just kind of said, hey, can you stick through spring and hand off the ball and get the trains running on time? And the same thing with Marco Lainez. He hit the portal too. And then you bring in, then you have Cade McNamara returning. He's in the portal and he's injured. And then you bring in, Brendan Sullivan and next thing you know, you're moving guys around. You've got injuries. You've got all kinds of issues. It's, you've got to make do. And with having a consensus first team All-American running back and a very good offensive line, then I think I was very surprised to see the way some fans continue to disparage George Barnett after this season, where you're looking at a team that has allowed 15 sacks after allowing 34 last year. That, as you said, averages almost 200 yards a game rushing. That's significant. Those are significant numbers for an offensive line, and they had to grow to get there. So, and you didn't have a ready-made left tackle like Caden Proctor. I mean, they made this work. So I think he can sell all that progress, but I do think that in order to get a ready-made immediate quarterback, it's probably going to have to take some sort of tie-in this year, and if the remaining part of the portal, to make that happen. Otherwise, they're going to have another year of significant progress to make it happen.
Yeah, we should point out, obviously it's not over yet. It doesn't end with Bo Pribula's commitment to Missouri, but that was kind of the last main guy that Iowa was tangibly in the mix for, and probably the guy that they were most in the mix for, outside of Hank Brown, of course. So that leads me to the follow-up question here, Scott, which is this: what is the percentage chance, or what is the chance that quarterback is here already? That Tim Lester already has the quarterback he needs. In talking to him yesterday on the side a little bit, he's just an exciting guy to talk to. He's just so much energy, and he's just excited to develop these guys. He's and see what he can do with them. He's got 4 guys now. Brendan Sullivan did not get his spring. Mm-hmm. He basically got a fall camp competition where he pushed Cade McNamara, but didn't, Cade McNamara nudged him out for the job, and they stuck with him. Maybe that's regrettable that they stuck with Cade so long. I think it probably is at this point. But you think about, he really hasn't had time to develop Brendan Sullivan, and I know he's going into his 5th year, but you can see there's some skill with Brendan Sullivan. He's not, he's okay, and we're going to get a shot to see him on Monday in the Music City Bowl, which I love. I love the fact that we're going to get to see, for only the 2nd time, presumably this year, Brendan Sullivan start and finish a game as the Hawkeyes quarterback. Wisconsin was the only other one, and Iowa beat him 42-10. So we just haven't seen much of Brendan Sullivan as a Hawkeye. Everyone wanted to see more. And then you throw in Hank Brown. Here's a guy that his tape looks pretty good. He's got a skill set that obviously Tim Lester likes. They targeted him. They got him. That was one of those things where it helped that Tim Lester had a connection to him in Chicago. He had a connection to his parent, a previous connection to a guy that started and won games as an SEC quarterback. And he's got 3 years left of eligibility, and that's a little bit tantalizing. He's a big kid. I saw him in person yesterday. Stood right next to him. Asked him if I could take his picture, and it was an open practice period, but you don't want to just shove a thing in their face. And so I just sort of, hey, you mind? And they just kind of want to get along with their business, but that's fine. Jimmy Sullivan, I can tell you that Tim Lester's amazingly excited about this kid. They could have walked away from him, Scott, in the recruiting. He had committed to the previous administration, and it's one of those things where, clearly Tim Lester's had a license to kind of clean house at the quarterback position, which is what you want. What you want if you're a Hawkeye fan, you want him to be able to overhaul that room and get a chance to overhaul that room. And now he's doing that. And so he loved what Sullivan did when he saw him, and he wanted to keep him. And I mean, he's here. He was in high school last Thursday. He's with the team practicing. He's going to be at the game. Won't be dressed. I mean, he can't dress for the game, but he'll be there, which is crazy. I mean, he just finished high school on last Thursday. And then, let's not forget Shaggy. I mean, a little bit of raw material there, Scott, but I mean, who's to say one of these guys with Tim Lester development doesn't become something that they want? So in that sense, I have a lot of excitement about this spring because he's got 4 guys. Last spring he had 0. This spring he's got 4 that he can work with.
They have a lot of quarterbacks now, which is good. They have a guy who has coached the position, which is better than what they've had for a long time. They have, the potential to get better. Do they have the potential to win a championship with any of them? I don't know that. And I think you do have to make that your North Star. You can develop and get there, but you can't just wish it to happen. And here's my thing with what's left in the portal versus Brendan Sullivan, let's say, because I think right now, if you're trying to forecast what the spring looks like at minimum, that Brendan Sullivan is going to be your number 1 and Hank Brown will be your number 2. And what you want is a competition there to the point where Hank Brown establishes himself to where maybe you split reps. Maybe Brendan Sullivan becomes a guy who does kind of what he did before he became the starter, come in for different situations, and then Hank Brown is your number 1. If you can show that kind of growth, then you're in a good spot. If they don't believe that they can go out and, they've got a murderous schedule, Chad. They got to play Oregon, Penn State, and Indiana at home, plus go on the road to the Big 12 runner-up early in the season and play their rivals. There are some significant games there, and they're going to need a quarterback with this defensive overhaul. And can they get better? Absolutely. They will get better. I believe that. Good enough or better, and I think what you look at in the portal, that it's now to the point of kind of picked over. There's the potential for a couple more players to maybe enter the portal. You probably want to look at multi-year starters at the FCS level to see if that maybe have 1 year. Maverick McIvor from Abilene Christian is pretty good. If Mark Gronowski enters the portal for South Dakota State, obviously, go get him. Yeah. Period. Sure. I don't want to hear any excuses. You go get him. No excuses.
He's from Illinois.
Right. No excuses. No, don't finish in second. Nothing. Get him if he's available. If not, then develop these guys. And that's what I think right now is kind of the borderline, do you see a Drew Aller? Do you see a Dylan Gabriel? I don't know. Hank Brown, can he get there? Maybe. I don't see it with Brendan Sullivan, but I see somebody who can win games, championships. That's where you need Hank Brown to develop at a pretty fast rate.
Yeah. And so that's kind of why I asked the question, could with some development, one of these guys get there? And so let's talk a little bit about anything more on quarterback you want to talk about? I don't know. They've been talking about the passing offense this bowl prep. They're just working on it a ton. So I want to see this game on Monday. I hope they throw the ball some. I think Tim Lester wants to throw the ball some. And I had a question in my text group about, should Iowa, air it out basically, because it's a bowl game. It's a bowl game. There's no championship on the line. And of course, Kirk doesn't think that way, but Tim Lester might think that way. And I think he's been wanting to throw the ball a lot this year, and they've been working on it a ton. So I don't know. I could see it happening. I don't discount the fact that Iowa, and they don't have Caleb Johnson. So why not?
Yeah.
Why not throw the ball 25, 30 times?
You can make that part of your game plan organically. that this is what we want to do in this situation, where previously we ran the ball, or previously we would run the ball in this situation, or we would approach it this way. Let's try it this way. I'm all for that. I just don't think you force it, because I do think winning is important here. I mean, if you go out with a loss and it maybe looks bad, or against Missouri, that has ramifications beyond just a bowl game in a good season. I mean, if you go 8-5, but you lose 24-6, that's not what you want, just because, hey, it doesn't really matter, so just let's air it out. No, win the game, but within parameters that it makes sense and the opportunities are there. Maybe it's 3rd and 3, and before we're going to run mid zone to the right because Jenny Dunker will blow up his guy. Well, maybe now you do a play action pass bootleg to the left, that you could alter your scheme and your attack that way. But I would not force anything that's not organic in this game, because Missouri's too good for that. You don't want to get embarrassed, because this is the only bowl game on Monday, and it leads into Monday Night Football. It's SEC Big Ten. This will be used against you and your conference. You have a responsibility to your league to put out a good effort, because it could be an embarrassing situation. So I think you play to win the game. So I think that's what you do.
Well, Brendan Sullivan is 100% healthy, and another person that's 100% healthy is the person talking right now. And I have to give a big year-end thanks to GameDay Men's Health, our presenting sponsor of Legends and listeners. GameDay Men's Health has been awesome for me. I legit mean that. I got my results from my blood work just before Christmas, and I was amazed. I knew I could feel a difference over these past 7 months since we got going with this, and the numbers bear that out. To go from lower T to actually high T, for somebody my age, all the way, above average, which it's crazy to think about. And it's been like super easy, super simple, no side effects, anything like that. I know everyone is different, but the only way you can know if GameDay Men's Health can work for you, help you out with testosterone replacement therapy, help you out with weight loss, is to check them out. Consultations are free, easy, and simple. Never any obligation, complete privacy. All the people are super chill, super awesome. I mean, when I'm traveling, they'll give me my needles to take with me, and it's just very convenient. So check them out at GameDayMen'sHealth.com, or call one of their or visit, just stop in to their locations in Ankeny, West Des Moines, or North Liberty. Scott, you mentioned getting blown out by a ranked team, and that is a little bit of I'm not predicting Iowa gets blown out, but Iowa does need to present itself in a positive manner, right? I mean, they've played 4 ranked teams over the last 2 years and scored 7 points. Penn State 31-0, Michigan 26-0, Tennessee 35-0, and Ohio State 35-7. And the one touchdown obviously was when it was 35-0, right? So, got to see something here, right? I mean, I think losing like they did last year is on the table. And that would be bad. That would be bad.
Yeah, that is certainly on the table. But I think one thing that we're forgetting when we lump these all together, I mean, you could use the aggregate that they've lost 8 straight to ranked opponents, and that's important. That's important to note. But then you also have to peel it back and say, okay, you lost all those games, but what were the reasons? And you can say that last year, the offense was a net negative. Let's not kid ourselves. It was bad. It was bad in the Penn State game, and that was with Cade, but they actually had a little bit of a punch to it. But Michigan, did anybody on this earth other than 3 people on ESPN's panel pick Iowa to win that game against Michigan? No. It needed to drag this team down to the mud and score on defense and maybe get a couple of field goals and win 13-12 or something like that. That was not going to happen. So, and then Tennessee, they could have punted on first down and only lost 21-0. I mean, that was the worst game I've ever seen by a quarterback. It was the worst game, Chad. Interception in the end zone, pick six, fumble inside your own 5-yard line. You gave them points and you took points off your board. So going against, but the equivalent to all of those, and including Ohio State this year, is they're all pretty good teams. I mean, we didn't know that Nico Iamaleava and Dylan Sampson were going to be, two of the best players in the SEC and help Tennessee make the playoff this year. They improved by their opt-outs last year. Jalen Wright was good. Dylan Sampson was the SEC Player of the Year last year. Same thing with, Nico is better than Joe Milton, and they showed it, and they were excited to be there. Iowa's defense tried really hard, but it's really difficult when you have no offense. I thought their best played game was probably against either Michigan or Ohio State this year out of that foursome. And Ohio State for a half, Iowa kind of moved the ball. They scored a touchdown. But in the second half, what was the difference right away? Turnovers.
Yeah, 3 and 10 snaps by the quarterback. Yep.
Exactly, by quarterback. And then you're down, go from 7-0 to 35-0 against an elite team, frankly, that's maybe the most talented. It's the most talented I've seen, and I've seen Oregon twice and I've seen them twice. So I would say this, that yes, none of those teams have been in the ballpark Iowa has been in. They haven't been in that neighborhood. You didn't play Illinois this year. You didn't play a team that's in that 8, 9, 10 win range as opposed to New Year's 6, Tennessee maybe notwithstanding. But so I think that Missouri is more of a matchup opponent for Iowa. And how you perform in this game is going to matter. And you would say this year that even the losses, 2 of them were to teams below 500, but Iowa competed in all of those except for the Ohio State game. And even that game, they played hard. I expect a pretty good effort here. I think Iowa's got a chance to win this game. There's some areas where Missouri is deficient, especially in the receiving core. They are really in trouble there. I mean, now Theo Weiss is tremendous. He's a bona fide breakout performer. But, Mookie Cooper's out. He's their leading punt returner. He's a guy that I think that Iowa, they really miss. Luther Burden, of course, opted out. He's their stud. He's a first-round draft pick. And Brett Norfleet, don't overlook him. He's out as well. He's their tight end. So they're down to, receiver basically 2 and 4 or 5. So, and this is an offense that underachieved in the passing game as well, even with Luther Burden. So I think overall, this is a matchup opponent for Iowa on equal terms. And so then it comes down to the margins. And the margin to me, special teams, it's a no. I mean, there's significant better special teams on Iowa than Missouri. I mean, Mookie Cooper was a decent punt returner, but he wasn't Peyton Weegan, and now they have nobody. Yeah. So, maybe they have somebody sneak in there. But I just think that the special teams component, if it gets to that point, which is field goals, I mean, they're 22 of 32. You got Drew Stevens. Iowa's got a really good punter. They're average at punting. I mean, they're lower than average. They're 84th in the country. And then you got Caden Weegan, first team All-American kick returner. So I do think this is a game set. A game Iowa is more than capable of winning against a ranked opponent to shed that label, come Monday afternoon.
Yeah, I think people hear Missouri and you think, they're probably decent, but they're 20-5 over the last 2 seasons under Eli Drinkwitz, and that's 20-5 for an SEC program, 11-5 in conference play. Mm-hmm. They did lose, to 3 quality opponents this year, but they beat everyone else. So they're very similar to Iowa. I mean, they're a ball control team. They hold the ball for 33 minutes per game. They never turn it over. Brady Cook has 2 interceptions this season and 2 over his last 14 starts. So they're just not going to turn it over much. They're going to hog the ball. And so the key of the game to me is just getting off the field. Iowa can't have its, part of the problem of like the UCLA game is Iowa's offense was never on the field. They got up 10-0 and then they were never on the field again. And then Sully got hurt. But So yeah, you got to get off the field. Their defense has been better. And I feel like the opt-outs and injuries are probably about even. I mean, Iowa loses Caleb Johnson. They lose Luther Burden. And the Hawkeyes will be without another All-Big Ten player on Monday. That's Logan Jones. Showed up to practice on Thursday. And there he was walking in with a cast on his right snapping hand. And so that caught our attention right away. Yeah, there you go. It was kind of funny because we went, there was three of us there. Tom, Kakert, John Steppe, and myself. So three reporters were there for practice. And, of course, we saw Logan right away walk into practice with his hand and, went down to shoot photos or whatever. And then so all of a sudden he gets up and starts snapping balls with his left hand, but he was in like a tank top. So he's not going to play. I can't imagine unless for some reason they suit him up and say, hey, if we need someone to go play some guard reps at some point, get in there and do your best. But they've got, they've got a lot of options at guard. They got a healthy Cade Pieper. And Tyler Ellsbury will be presumably the center. Everyone's kind of rallying around him. Kind of a neat story, actually.
Yeah.
If you think about it, a guy that came back for his fifth year, probably could have transferred elsewhere and started. Just kind of loved being a Hawkeye. Jay Higgins, or who was it? Someone put him in the category of, it was Richmond. He was talking about how Ellsbury's always hanging around Higgins and Lachey, and just quality guys, and that's Tyler Ellsbury. So he'll be making his sixth career start on Monday. I feel great about that. You'd love to have Logan Jones out there, but Jennings Dunker is back. That's a big help, and he's coming back next year, which we knew, but he talked about it. And to your point on George Barnett, Logan Jones and Jennings Dunker, one of the big reasons they're coming back is because they love George Barnett. And so I've come around on him quite a bit, and I feel that he is an asset to this program. And I think they were just playing with young pieces and bad quarterbacks for most of the last few years. And it's fun to see what he can do. They're real excited about Trevor Locke next year at left tackle. It sounds like Jennings will stay at right tackle next season. So they're looking for a left tackle. I think Trevor Locke is your front runner there, but it's just wanted to point out the Logan Jones news that he's out, and of course Jamar Harris isn't playing. So you take away some of Iowa's top players. Also, I feel like that's kind of a push in this game, and should be a good game, pretty equally matched.
Yeah, their right tackle opted out too. He's going to go to the NFL, and he's an all SEC tackle. So that's a significant loss for them in the running game. And when you add him and North Fleet, that's a challenge for the mighty Tigers of Missouri. But I think when you look at this, offensive line, having the situation they're in, and no offense to Cade Pieper, even though I think he's got some upside, he's going to be a starter probably next year. He's going to be a long-term player at Iowa. But I think I would be more nervous about him making his first career start as a center in this game as opposed to Tyler Ellsbury, who did it. I thought he played pretty well last year when he spelled Logan when he had a high ankle sprain late in the year. I think that's a pretty good move, and guys rally around people like that. That there is a brotherhood, particularly among the offensive line, but football players in general, that they do rally around one another in these types of situations. So I think this is a good thing for Iowa in this regard. But I'm really anxious to see the running game. That's going to be really fascinating to me because this is a preview of what you got coming in. Without Caleb Johnson, who is as good as they've ever had at that position. He was a home run hitter. He could do so many different things so well for you that, can Kamari Moulton, who had nice games, or Jazz Patterson, who had nice games, can they combine to have that type of production? And behind this offensive line, that's going to be really fascinating to watch. And Brendan Sullivan is going to be fascinating to me because he had some really good moments I would say against Northwestern and against Wisconsin, he was really good. And then he was not good at all against UCLA. I mean, he had as much of an issue. He was as much of an issue in that loss as the run defense was. So he's going to have to not give the ball away. And, and that's where, you look at the offensive line and how it's gelled this year. And I think Joe Sixpack sometimes goes, he sucks. He's not. No. When you look at what they did with this offensive line and how they grew it, because looking back a few years ago, that 18-19 group completely flamed out. They had nothing. Unfortunately for them, Cody Ince had to retire early before his passing, God rest his soul. Justin Britt, was always injured, but then there were a lot of guys who just didn't pan out, who retired or whatever. And so they had to make do with what they had for a few years. And they're finally at that point where they were. And now you're bringing back Jennings Dunker and Logan Jones, and you bring back a Bo Stevens who's had some years.
I think he could take a big step.
He could be that.
Really excited about him.
You got that next year. And then now you've got it back to where Iowa has always been good, which is the stagger. They started from the ground zero other than Linderbaum in 2021. And then they were just trying to work their way up to here. But now you got a stagger. Now you've got a couple guys coming back who are elite, who can train the other guys to go with them. And then it's just kind of the stair step. For about 3 to 4 years there, they were at ground zero. And that reflected on George Barnett, and it wasn't his fault. All he could do is stay positive with them and push them in a direction which they eventually got to.
Yeah, I put in my article or text group, I can't remember, maybe both. I think I wrote about the O-line next year yesterday. It's all a blur. I do expect I think the starting point for next year's starting line will be Locke, Stevens. Keep him, and they're going to keep him at the same spot. Obviously Logan Jones at center. Cade Pieper, I think, is probably your number one right guard, but there's going to be competition there. And then of course Dunker at right tackle. They're still really high on and think is really, really good and just has been hurt constantly.
Mislinski?
Yes, Mike Mislinski. That's a name to watch. Yeah. He was running with he was actually the number 2 center for what it's worth in practice yesterday with Pieper at guard. So he'll be an interior guy, and Locke's on a good trajectory, and they're still pecking away in the portal. I know at tackle, but I think they're excited about Locke. So Richmond said he's kind of gotten in shape, and he's won from what he knows. Like he's one good winter conditioning period away from being an ass kicker out there.
That's good
at left tackle. So who knows? Go ahead.
Yeah, if they would have been able to secure the Rice tackle, then you get
went to Ohio State.
He went to Ohio State, and this is the frustrating part of the portal for Iowa, is when you're constantly number 2. It's like, they're number 2 on a quarterback, and they're number that they really wanted, and then the number 2 on a left tackle who would have, then you're looking at that offensive line going, okay, they're in business. And I'm not saying that Trevor Lauck can't be.
No, you would rather have the Rice guy for one year.
Right. It's make Trevor Lauck your swing tackle. So then he fills in when there's an injury or whatever. That's preferable. But now they're at that situation where they're looking at the portal, probably going, is our guy with potential and growth as good or better than the next guy? And the money has shot up so high for some of these guys. There was a Valley offensive lineman who was pretty good. He got $800K from another school, and it's like, this was a guy that you kick the tires on and think that you might pay $150K. And so when you see the price going up like that, it's like, well, you might as well just stick with what you got and work with it. And that's what you are as a developmental program. And plus you want to reward the people that have put in the equity in your program, the people that have stuck with you, who bought in, and players will play with whoever's next to them, but they develop bonds with people who they've sweat and bled with. So I think that's probably where they are at that position. If Ethan Onawaya would have walked right in, and they would have accepted him, if he would have allowed himself to be, unlike the last left tackle they got in the portal for 6 weeks. But that to me is the next step.
6 weeks. Sounds like they're in the mix for this Sam Phillips out of Chattanooga, wide receiver. I do think they could use one more receiver. I think the one thing about this passing game also to remember is that all the receivers are coming back next year. I mean, you lose Luke Lachey, but wide receiver wise, you're bringing back Jacob Gill, you're bringing back Reese Vanderzee, who's going to play in this game. Jarrett Bowie, Jason Howard. I'm not saying that. Yeah, not going to say that any of them are earth shattering, but Vanderzee was very intriguing. And what we saw, opener, he was great. Michigan State, he was great. Then he got hurt, stress fracture. Has been out the whole back half of the year. But if you could add, you got to have a playmaker there. The little bit of we saw in practice yesterday, saw them using Terrell Washington a little more, Caden Weechin a little more. Let's see if they maybe get, instead of Caleb Johnson, maybe we'll see some short passes to some playmakers. I think they see Weechin obviously as a playmaker. Washington is a playmaker, and that could help fill some of those running back snaps as well. One other portal addition, Scott, that we should mention is Jonah Pace. That's his name, right? Jonah Pace. Yeah. Okay, I got it right. I keep saying it wrong. I keep wanting to say Jonah Hill, which I know isn't right. I don't think he would be as good at D tackle, but he's coming. Yeah, that's some size. Good pickup. Iowa needed one there. They probably need another, maybe. But that helps him. He's kind of a Heflin type, I guess. Whatever. But he's probably going to start next year. So you pick up a starter in the portal with 1 year to go from Central Michigan, and feel pretty good about at least you're filling some needs here. And I think if they could get maybe another receiver here, that would help. But anything else portal wise?
Yeah. It sounds like they're standing pat more at edge rusher. Now that they brought back Ethan Herkett, so you've got him and you've got Max Llewellyn, who I thought was a very much an ascending player. And, Brian Allen, when he returns to health after his surgeries, they've got to get another guy, I think. And this is where the building period is really important, that they, the true freshmen, that redshirted this year, which one of them can emerge? Can any of them emerge and become players that you think can rotate? Can Kenny Merriweather become a rotational guy? Can somebody like Joseph Anderson or Devin Kennedy or Chima Chineke, can any of them walk in there and become valuable? Either a rotational guy or right on the edge of being a rotational guy. Can Yosei Epineza walk in and be the fourth defensive end? I think that those are questions why I think that they're in okay shape there. I do agree with you that they probably need one more D tackle unless they believe, and this is where the development comes in. And Kelvin's going to have to be, they're honest with themselves, but that they have to figure, can one of these guys grow to the point where they're not just a guy in practice, but they can actually put them in games. And then I would say that maybe, they've been investigating corners. It's interesting to me, kind of like with any other position at Iowa. If you bring in a corner, they have to ask themselves, is this guy better than Deshaun Lee? Is this guy better than TJ Hall? Is this guy better than John Nestor? Or, anybody else, Jalen Watson or whoever's on the depth chart right now? Because if they aren't, then you're just muddying the pool and you're making people look over their shoulder for no reason. Because then if you're TJ Hall, for instance, you might go, well, if he's going to replace me and he just came in here and I don't see it, then maybe I need to go somewhere else. And you've got that kind of fear factor, paranoia. So I do think right now, this, I would say, warrants some sort of.
Oh, there we go. You did it.
So Iowa Everywhere welcomes Warrant to Hoy Sherman Place on Friday, April 11th. Want to win your way into the show? Go to iowaeverywhere.com and hit the contest tab, or you can go to iowaeverywhere.com/contest/warrant for a free entry and a chance to win a pair of tickets. will announce 3 winners right here on Legends and Leaders and Legends and Listeners. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yes. On January 8th. So, and I would say, you know, sometimes she cries, as the song says, but heaven isn't that far away.
So do you think Iowa wins this game or not?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Right now I'm leaning Missouri. Got to make my pick tonight. So for the paper. So
Right.
I'm leaning Missouri, but I just think I'm a little concerned about not having Caleb Johnson. But I think the defense will come to play. So I think you've seen a lot of high scoring games in the Bowls, probably more of a low scoring game, but we'll see. Let's talk. Go ahead.
I was going to say, you know, here's kind of why. You know, Missouri again, you know, Brady Cook has been efficient this year, 9 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He split time. If Drew Pine went in, I mean, he had 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. So Cook has been the much more efficient quarterback. They have a really good pass rusher in Johnny Walker Red, Johnny Walker Blue, you know. So he's in the right town for that name, I think. And you just hope that he doesn't get anything worthy of that. But
6 straight games with sacks, Johnny Walker leads the country.
Yeah. He leads the country in that regard. He has 7.5 overall. You know, but they only have 6 interceptions. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean they can't get any. It just means that's the number. You know, whereas Iowa has 16. You know, scoring wise, they're comparable. Scoring defense, I would say they're comparable. They're 3 points apart. But, you know, Missouri did play a little more tough schedule, even though it wasn't that daunting.
Yeah.
You know, but Iowa's schedule, when you look back at the teams, it wasn't real strong. You know, when you're talking about mostly 5 and 7 teams you played and beat. I think this is going to be one of those games where it comes down to the margins. It's going to come down to last minutes. This is where Iowa has thrived. Iowa's been a tough team, 17-17 in the fourth quarter. And it's a 3-points, you know, in favor of Mizzou. But Iowa has the opportunity to execute a punt for 47 yards, you know, return a punt for 14 yards, and kick a field goal for 53 yards. I'm not sure Missouri can do that. So that's why I'll pick Iowa by 3. I think somewhere in the neighborhood of 20-17.
Yeah. On our Hawk Central show, I picked Missouri 20-17. So we're on the same score.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. Let's talk a little playoff, Scott, if you'd like. What'd you think of the first round? There's been a lot of banter about it. You know, what would you know, what's your biggest takeaway that's legit out of, you know, all these blowouts that happened in the first week?
The right teams made the playoff. I'll start there. Indiana deserved to be there. Indiana had a margin of victory was 28 points a game this year. They averaged 43 points and change, and they gave up 14 in points and change this year. They led the country in run defense. They were 11-1 in the Big Ten. They played both national championship finalists from last year and won. What else do you want them to do? What else can they do to get to the playoff other than not reign in the almighty SEC? You know, and then you look at SMU, 10-2. One of the great stories that's been really overlooked all year long. This is a team that elevated from the group of 5 to a major conference in its first year, finished undefeated. And it lost the championship game on a 56-yard field goal in the game's final play. It deserved to be there. It was 10-2. Its only other loss was to an equal 10-2 team in BYU. So they deserve to be there. The SEC teams crying foul is, to me, one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen when it comes to this, you know, to this playoff structure, because the SEC absolutely is first among equals when it comes to any kind of representation in a postseason. They've earned that right over time to be in that ballpark. However, when you're 9-3 and other teams are 11-1, you have to take a step back. And it's almost like they've devalued this postseason because the SEC did not get its number of teams that it thought. And then to see Lane Kiffin his tweet, and after blowouts happen. They happen all the time in the playoffs. They happen all the time in the championship game, and then to watch Tennessee get completely dismantled, that should have gotten as much attention from the people complaining about Indiana and SMU as anything, because Tennessee was a good team. They deserved to be there too. They had a great year. Ohio State was a fantastic team that night. But it shouldn't devalue this tournament that we've all been excited to watch for so many years, just because a team, just was like over. I feel like that was really unfortunate. And I think it was a bad misstep by ESPN that reeked of bias.
Yeah. I mean, it would have been, if Iowa, 2015 Iowa, I mean, very similar as Indiana, I think, in terms of just sort of like, well, they didn't beat anybody. Well, they beat everybody.
Yeah.
Pretty much. So what do you mean that, so yeah, it's deserved to be there. Iowa would have deserved to be there in 2015, just like Indiana. So anyway, yeah, it's
this country in college football, they hate no team unlike the overachiever. The overachiever is the most hated team in college sports because it's not of the blue blood. So it invades that territory, and everybody has tried to tear them down, whether it was Indiana or it was Iowa with the fake ID, or it was Boise State with Kellen Moore. It would have been this way had Iowa State beaten, let's say if they would have beaten Texas Tech and they would have been 11-2. And they would have lost the Big 12 championship game. They would have gotten torn to shreds. It would have been this way if Iowa would have beaten Michigan State and UCLA and gotten into that territory. And it would have been on the cusp of the playoff, and it would have gotten torn to shreds because they're not in the SEC. Because you not only have to earn your way there, but you have to do it in a way that's palatable to the entire country. And these teams don't recruit at a 5-star level. Indiana doesn't. Iowa does. This is the greatest Indiana story, that it's ever had. It had 2 Big Ten championships ever. 1945, World War II era. In 67, they tied. It was a 3-way tie. That's it. They have the losingest record in Power Conference football, and they win 11 games, and then we tear them to shreds. So this is my little soapbox here on this. I think right now it's I want to see this going forward. I think you also have to legitimize the playoff, because otherwise, by tearing it down like this for one 9-3 team, we're not talking about a 10-2 Alabama team. If 10-2 Alabama was there, they would have been in, no questions, and no argument for me. I mean, okay, so they slip up with Vanderbilt, for instance. Okay, fine. It happens. In a 12-team field, they're okay. But you're 9-3, and you lost to 2 6-6 teams, one of which was the domination, at Oklahoma. The other one, Vanderbilt, which had a tremendous year. I don't want to take anything away from them, but they lost to 3-9 Georgia State, which is the last place team in the Sun Belt. So when you're going down this path, it's like, and the flip side is all the arguments are, well, this team, it should be about who you beat, not who you lost to. Well, all the results count. All of them do. So I'm kind of fed up with it.
I'm glad I asked you. It was good.
Yeah.
It was good stuff. I can't argue with it. What do you think happens coming up here? Obviously, Texas heavily favored over Arizona State, Penn State heavily favored over Boise State. And then, 2 pretty great matchups, Georgia, Notre Dame, and, of course, the one you're covering, Ohio State, Oregon. So how many of the – obviously, the max Big Ten teams that can get to the semis are 2, because 2 of them are playing each other. But what do you think happens with our Big Ten teams here, Scott?
I like Penn State's chances because even though they've kind of failed in some of these spots in the past, I think this is a little bit different team. I wrote about mid-game James after they lost to Ohio State earlier this year and got a little bit of a reaction from Penn State fans. But I think when you look at how they performed against Oregon in the championship game. When they're down 28-10, I thought, okay, they're going to get boat raced. And no, they came back and they made it a one-score game. And they competed. And then they destroyed SMU. I think they've got the defense and they've got the running game, which is really unusual. I mean, they've got a two-headed punch there, with Katron Allen and Nick Singleton. And I think Drew Aller is a pretty good quarterback, and they got the best tight end in the country. I think they win. And now it's an 11-point spread. That's a little rich for my blood, but I think they could win by 10. The other games, as you mentioned, Arizona State. If I'm going to pick an upset, that's going to be Arizona State for whatever reason. I mean, really? I think they have a real legitimate chance against.
Wouldn't it be something if they won and Notre Dame won? SEC would be done.
I know.
Not
gonna.
They'll still find a way to excuse it all.
Oh yeah, of course. It's always that.
Well, Arizona State got to rest for a week, and
yeah, right.
It'll be something.
Well, the SEC fans.
Why'd they get the 5? They got to change the schedules. Texas should have been the 4.
Yeah. Well, I think what'll happen is, Texas, they won't quite buy in as much on Texas because they're still a newbie and they never really liked them before they joined the SEC. So they'll be like, that's just the Big 12 coming out of them or something like that. But
sure, okay,
but Georgia would be one that would wound them, if that happened. And what worries me about Notre Dame, it's only one factor. It's field goal kicking. I mean, going into last week's game, they were 8-18. Ooh. So, so I can see them losing painfully, like 24-23 or something.
Yeah.
The best game of the weekend, the year, maybe all season, comes in the Rose Bowl. And I think this is going to end up a lot like the first one. It's just going to be back and forth. And based on what I saw the other day, I think Ohio State had two paths that could have gone by, and it equally were opportunistic against Tennessee. One is just get frustrated, lose. Everybody wants to burn down Ryan Day's house, which would have happened. So, two, do what they did, which is we're Ohio State. You're not. As soon as Tennessee's walking off the field, after getting demolished, they're playing a mock-up version of Rocky Top that's really sarcastic, and then all the fans, the student section didn't leave, so they could just start chanting SEC, SEC. So you have that. I like the Buckeyes by 3.
Okay. I was going to go Oregon. I think people are forgetting how good Oregon is, but
I'm not. I saw them. I'm like, that's why it's a tough matchup. I pick Oregon against everybody else.
Yeah, no, it's going to be fascinating. It's definitely the game I'm looking forward to the most in this whole playoff, probably. So yeah, it should be great. I'm glad you're going to get to be there. Enjoy Pasadena, Scott. Hope your flight is nice and safe. Are you flying into Burbank or LAX?
LAX.
Okay.
Yeah.
Burbank was I enjoyed flying into Burbank, but small little airport closer to Pasadena. But anyway.
Yeah. Media hotels downtown. So
okay. All right. Gotcha. Well, thank you to everybody. We don't know what we're gonna I guess we haven't talked about next week, or I don't know. We'll let people know when our show is gonna be next week. We usually air on Thursday mornings. I know that'll be New Year's Day, and you'll be maybe traveling. Maybe we could do it New Year's night. I don't know. We'll just have to see. You're going to be busy though, so we'll figure out legends and listeners next week. But until next time, for Scott Dochterman, this is Chad Leistikow, coming to you from the Channel Seed Studios and only on the Iowa Everywhere Network.